All right, hello, my name's Dennis LeGear. I'm a retired captain from the city of Oakland. I have extensive fire service knowledge, mainly revolving around everything with movement of water, from hydrants all the way to nozzles. And a big component of that is hose. I've specifically been very interested in handline hose for about the last 15 to 20 years. We had a line of duty death in the city of Oakland, and we went from 100 PSI nozzles to 50 PSI nozzles, and we went from 1.5 to 1.75 hose, and we went basically from an average target flow of 80 to 100 gallons a minute to 160 to 170 gallons a minute. Obviously that caused deployment issues, line issues, training. So we tested for about 5 years, different hose manufacturers and different companies, and that's where I built my knowledge base. And over time, it's just grown. I retired in 2009, and I taught in college hose and nozzles. I taught hose and nozzles in our fire academy, but then eventually I started a company that helped fire departments spec and lay out equipment on rigs. And one of the things I was always dissatisfied with, because I'm a big fan of the 40 to 60 PSI nozzle pressure range, is in a traditional double jacketed hose, nothing seemed as good as the hose that I used that was manufactured in the early 80s, early 90s, some of it the late 70s. It was much stiffer and easier to use at that lower nozzle pressure. So that's where Tru-ID came from. I started it as Tru Hose. You know, if you Google Tru Hose, you'll go to my website, you'll see that I worked with several manufacturers. Key kind of gave me a handshake deal that no compensation. I don't get money for every foot that's sold. No sales compensation, I should say. But they took a loom out of service, and they started messing around with producing different hose weaves, thickness of the rubber liner. This is what I consider a gold standard traditional construction. It's an all polyester hose as an EDMP rubber lined, but as you can see, it's very stiff, okay? And you can't get something for nothing. If you make something very stiff, it doesn't fold super flat. It will break in, it will fold flatter. But the other issue, the reason it's called Tru-ID, internal diameter, over time, I realized that the internal diameter of hose had crept up. I wrote an article called Hose Dreams, you can look it up. I also wrote an article called Nozzle Dreams, they're kind of interrelated. But what I've noticed is they open this diameter up to try to flow more water through 1.75 inches, which is incredibly popular in the early 90s, and in some areas even till today, right? So if you increase this diameter at the same flow, 160 gallons a minute at an 1.75 diameter, it's going to be about 22 feet per second, 23 feet per second. If you go to 1.9 inch or 1.88, it's going to drop the velocity of the water going through here. Same flow, lazy water going through. If you have a bend or a kink and something hits it at 23 feet per second, it's more likely to straighten. If it's at 20 feet per second, it's more likely not to straighten, right? So that was one big issue. The other thing is friction loss. Friction loss is not your enemy in a hand line. You need a certain amount of friction loss to get a whole hose to stay open, right? I like friction loss of around 20 PSI per length in your small hand line attack package. So this at 160 gallons a minute, it's about 35 PSI per 100, right? So about 17 pounds per length, right? So it's pretty easy, 40 plus 40. Plus 50-pound nozzle pressure, 120. 120 is a great discharge on a crosslay, because if your idle pressure is 50, right, and you take a hydrant that's 80, which is common, you don't have to gate down your crosslay. So I was trying to solve that problem as well, right? So there's been some burn through and wear issues. I wanted a hose that had a substantial amount of material in it, right? So FDNY, the FDNY spec had a substantial amount of material in it, so I was kind of copying this spec. However, if you notice, if you pan in here, right, you can tell, right, these are both sold as 1.75 inches. Key's very open and honest, so this is 1.88 inches. If you take 1.88 inches and you divide it by 2, it's 15/16. It's a very good hose for 15/16, right? You can use a 15/16 on this too, but the water will travel faster through it. So honestly, you should test, if you're doing in your department, you shouldn't just test one manufacturer. You should test multiple manufacturers. whether it's Neidner, Mercedes, North American, All American. You know, I would stick to gold standard companies that manufacture in the United States or North America, right? But you want the product to speak for itself, and I think these products really speak for themselves. One thing you'll notice, since we shrunk the diameter of the hose, right, it means there's less water in this per foot. So charged hose weight is a big deal too. If it doesn't fold as good, some of my fire services, like Captain Morris or Jay Camella out of Oakland, they say, look how easy it is to put a gloved finger in here and grab it, right? So there's pros and cons to everything. You can't have your cake and eat it too. You want to find a hose that works right. If you don't want a double jacketed rubber line construction, right? Maybe you want something that can absolutely not delaminate, right? Maybe you want to go with a construction like this. I'm not a huge fan of this construction, right? This is what I was trying to do. I was trying to create a gold standard double jacket hose. Now, a real winner, right? This took 3 or 4 prototypes. This also took 3 or 4 prototypes. It's not just me. I had a group of people all across the nation testing this hose, testing it in different fire departments. They were doing me a favor. Key was doing me a favor. So I was sending this hose to different people and mentors in the fire service because I wanted an independent, not a Dennis LeGear driven process. They sent in their evaluation forms. I worked with my contacts at Key Hose, and it was a very frustrating process. It was like herding cats, okay? So we get down to this, right? This is a very nice small coupling bowl. This is the typical coupling bowl in 2.5 inch, right? You can see there's a little bit of difference in size from here to here, from my left finger to my right finger, right? This is 2.5 inch hose, right? This is 2.5 inch hose. They're both sold as 2.5 inch hose, but if you look, right, there's about a 1/4 inch, right? It's about a 1/4 inch, right? There's nothing wrong with this hose. It's a little lighter weight, folds a little bit better. This one still folds really good, okay? But charged hose weight, it can be up to 80 to 90 pounds lighter per 100 feet, depending on how lightweight hose and how big your internal diameter is. And I just had a fire department who's a client do a 2.5 inch test, all different manufacturers. This was involved in the process. They ended up selecting this product. They just did their hot rollout in their department, I think about 25 station department. And they said 30-year captain's like, it's like a miracle. It's so easy to maneuver, right? It's smaller in the hands. Who has grabbed 2.5 inch hose that's near 3 inch and you're like this, right? So those were all the goals. The other goal was to keep it at a price point for large agencies. Some of these more exotic constructions are fairly expensive to purchase, right? This is at a lower price point. So if you can't afford something like this, right, some people consider this Cadillac hose, you know, it's just a different construction in my mind, but it is good hose. But you get similar performance maybe with whip. This one's gonna move more water because it's bigger at the same discharge. Actually, you know what? That's not true. I grabbed the Key Combat Ready 2 inch, right? So that's not true. This is a 2 inch hose. I grabbed the wrong hose. But that's not really why I'm talking, right? We're not talking about that. We're talking specifically about this concept, right? And this concept was to make hose match the target flows. And 2.5 inch for hand lines, really around 300 gallons a minute. At 50 PSI, you're at 110 pounds nozzle reaction. If you want to advance that down a hallway, that's about the maximum nozzle reaction you want. Well, this hose is about 20 PSI per 100 feet. If I widened it out a little bit, like a lot of the 2.5 inch hoses in the market, it would be like 15 pounds per 100 feet. So it's harder to pump. It's a lower pump discharge pressure. Even at 20 pounds per 100 feet, let's say, roughly, right? You could still go 1,000 feet away from the rig, pump discharge pressure at 200 friction loss, 50 at the nozzle, right? Who's had a 1,000-foot stretch fire? Not too many people. I had an 800-foot stretch fire in Oakland, so that was my limit. When I think commercial hand lines, I'm thinking they should be good from the rig 800, 1,000 feet if necessary, right? You can't do that in a smaller hose size. Could we take this 1 3/4 and 150 feet away from the rig, flow 250 gallons a minute? Sure, but we've limited our operational function, right? So I strongly recommend if you're purchasing hose, right, and you're doing target flows and you're looking at this, call me. I'll recommend a bunch of different manufacturers you can test, but I think you should really give this a shot and see how you like it, because this I gave a big spine and backbone to, and in a small attack hand line at a 60-pound nozzle reaction, it's going to remind you 1.5 inches, and you're going to be pulling it around house. This, if you're used to 3-inch, near 3-inch 2.5, and it's tough to pump and the nozzles are always hot and it's over pumped, you're going to find this is a really big solution to your problem. And this is about creating solutions and working with our industrial partners, and I'm a middleman, right? So I'll go anywhere that people will listen to me. So I'm very proud of this product. I'm proud that Key built it. I'm proud that they tolerated the multiple prototypes rejected by the testing group, and I'm really happy. If the testing group wants to come forward, some of the guys have already said, hey, I was involved in the project, that's on them. You know, there's no secrets in this industry, but I'm gonna put an article out, I'm gonna write some stuff out in detail, and it's available now for demo, and it should be available for purchase after FDIC. Thank you very much. Thanks, Matt Hinkle from Box Alarm Training for taping me, and I hope it edits up okay.